Five Nights at Freddy's has been breaking people's brains since 2014, and in the decade plus since Scott Cawthon dropped a horror game about haunted pizza restaurant robots onto an unsuspecting internet, the community built around figuring out what is actually going on has become one of the most dedicated, most obsessive, and most impressively wrong theory ecosystems in gaming history. Wrong in the best possible way, because FNAF's lore is dense enough, contradictory enough, and deliberately obscured enough that even the theories that turned out to be completely off base were doing serious intellectual work to get there. Today we're breaking down every major FNAF theory, the confirmed, the contested, and the ones that are still very much up for debate, starting with the one that started the whole conversation, the Dream Theory. Five Nights at Freddy's lore fans once bought into a wild idea. The first three FNAF games were all just dreams happening before the infamous bite of 83, and FNAF 4 was a nightmare after that hospital incident. This theory exploded in popularity around 2015 to 2016 thanks to Matt Pat and his game theory videos, which dissected every cryptic clue. But here's the kicker. Scott Cawthon, the series creator, shot this down multiple times. He confirmed all four games show actual events, not dreams. You can see why this theory caught on at first glance. The games toss out so many puzzles and inconsistencies that pinning them as dreams made a twisted kind of sense. Plus, stuff like the Save Them minigame and the consistent character designs across the series don't fit the loose logic of dreams. Scott made it clear. 4 games, 1 story, means 4 parts of one real, canonical timeline. Even after the debunks, some fans cling to this old favorite. It fills in gaps and smooths over early lore wrinkles better than the current timeline. Plus, it has nostalgic charm. But trust me, Scott's words are the final call. Dream Theory might be tempting, but it doesn't hold water. Next up, we're diving into the infamous bite of 87 versus the bite of 83. Yeah, because those aren't just bite marks. They're the heart of FNAF's mystery. Bite of 87 vs bite of 83. The bite of 83 and the bite of 87 are two of the darkest, most important moments in FNAF lore, and yet they get confused way more often than you'd think. Here's why these bites are totally different, and how each one shapes the story timeline. The bite of 83 involves the crying child from FNAF 4. He's attacked by Fredbear, basically Freddy's predecessor, and suffers fatal frontal lobe damage. This bite is brutal because it kills him and becomes a core tragedy in the Afton family story, but it doesn't spark the murder spree. Those happened earlier. Now, the bite of 87 is mentioned by Phone Guy in the first game. The victim survives but loses major frontal lobe function, basically ending up in a vegetative state. Many fans believe it was Jeremy Fitzgerald, the FNAF 2 night guard. This injury pushed Freddy Fazbear's Pizza to tighten safety and worsened its reputation. Unlike 83, this bite was caused by an animatronic malfunction, not springlock failure. Why does this difference matter? One bite kills a child and haunts a family forever. The other nearly kills an employee and dooms the restaurant. These events define key characters and William Afton's moves. Also, the bite of 83's connection to springlock failure keeps fans debating technical details, while 87's role in the story is clearer. But here's the kicker. These bites fuel endless debates about who lived, who died, and what memories haunt the animatronics. If the bites seem tricky, just wait until we dive into Purple Guy and Phone Guy, two characters who blur every line. Purple Guy, Phone Guy. Here's a classic FNAF mix-up that stuck around way too long. Purple Guy, the infamous child murderer William Afton, and Phone Guy, the cheerful tutorial voice we all know as Ralph, were supposedly the same person. Sounds wild, right? But before you buy into it, hear me out. Scott Cawthon, the series creator, shut this down multiple times with crystal clear evidence. The theory first gained major traction thanks to some early game theory videos that mashed up clues and assumed since both characters were purple, they must be one and the same. That idea lingered because Phone Guy's identity was fairly mysterious at the time, and Purple Guy's purple color fit too perfectly. But here's where it gets impossible. In Five Nights at Freddy's 3, Phone Guy's recorded phone calls happen simultaneously with Springtrap, the physical form of Purple Guy, lurking in the vents. Unless this guy has a twin or a cloning machine, he can't be both places. The game files and character encyclopedia make it even clearer by listing William Afton and Ralph as separate individuals with separate roles. Scott himself addressed this fan confusion in a cryptic comment about Game Theory's video. He said they got almost everything right, but notably left out Purple Guy equals Phone Guy. That deliberate cryptic wording dragged fans for years, fueling debate and hoping for some hidden twist. Spoiler alert, it never came. Phone Guy remains this separate, unlucky employee trying to warn you, while Purple Guy stands as the cold-blooded villain. The Purple Phone Guy myth is a prime example of how early fan theories can snowball without solid ground, and why creator clarifications eventually have to step in. But if you you thought these two being confused was bad, wait until we talk about Golden Freddy's dual identity neck, Golden Both. Golden Freddy has always been one of FNAF's biggest mysteries, but the Golden Both theory takes it to another level by claiming that two souls share this spectral animatronic, Cassidy and the crying child. Before you brush it off, hear me out. The survival logbook is a goldmine here. It directly hints that Cassidy, one of the infamous missing children, is the vengeful spirit controlling Golden Freddy's head. This theory cleverly explains why Golden Freddy's jump scare is just his floating head, not a full body attack. Cassidy's spirit is tied to the head, able to see and act, while the crying child, the victim of the bite of 83, haunts the body but can't control it fully. It's like a paranormal split personality locked inside a single animatronic shell. If that wasn't enough, the shadow animatronics we see in FNAF 4 are interpreted as shards of the crying child's broken soul, fragmented and scattered among the animatronics. That adds a bittersweet layer to the idea that the crying child isn't gone, but trapped, shattered across the haunted cast. Cassidy isn't stuffed in an animatronic suit like the other missing children either. This theory argues she remains separate but tied to Golden Freddy as the fifth victim, which is, you know, not exactly what fans expected. Of course, this theory hasn't been accepted as canon by everyone. Some argue it conflicts with lore from the Sticky Note room, which seems to depict different spirit to animatronic mapping. The debate around this split possession and who exactly controls Golden Freddy's body versus head still fuels endless fan discussion, but here's the thing. Golden Both fits the creepy dual identity vibe perfectly, making Golden Freddy not just a haunted suit, but a battleground for two tortured souls. If you think that's complicated, wait till we dive into Mike Trap versus Will Trap, where the identity wars get even messier. Mike Trap versus Will Trap, the fight over who's really trapped inside the iconic Springtrap suit, divided the FNAF community for years. On one side, you had the Mike Trap theory claiming Michael Afton was Springtrap, the surviving son caught in the rotting animatronic after trying to undo his family's mess. On the other, Will Trap insisted it was William Afton, the murderous father hiding inside the suit after his gruesome death. Before you roll your eyes at fan drama, hear me out. This wasn't just baseless speculation or shipping war. The debate was intense because both sides had concrete clues that made total sense. Sister Location's creepy custom night minigame showed Michael's purple decaying form, which the Mike Trap fans took as proof he was the Springlock victim. Meanwhile, early hints in the original game suggested William died inside a Springlock suit at the incident, linking him clearly to Springtrap's identity. Here's where it gets official and no longer up for debate. Freddy Fazbear's Pizzeria Simulator dropped the hammer hard. The end credits explicitly named Scraptrap the upgraded Springtrap as William Afton himself. The official character encyclopedia doubles down, stating William hides from ghosts inside the Spring Bonnie suit before his eventual demise. Scott Cawthon, the creator, later piled on by directly endorsing MatPat's The Final Theory video, which definitively identifies William as Springtrap with all the evidence laid bare. And that's not just game canon. Multiple other media tie into this, including the novel trilogy, Fazbear Frights books, and even the upcoming film, all cementing William's identity as Springtrap beyond doubt. Meanwhile, the visuals of Michael rotting were later explained as artistic license, an exaggerated stylistic representation of his tortured existence rather than literal possession of Springtrap. But here's the kicker, this confirmation reshaped the entire Afton family story. William's horrific legacy as the killer physically trapped in Springtrap now contrasts sharply with Michael's tragic role as the son trying to undo all that damage in life and death. The community debates didn't just split fan loyalties, they literally shaped how fans viewed the family's dark history and motives. At least now the lore is settled. If you thought this battle over Springtrap was wild, wait until you hear about Gregbot. Gregbot, Gregory being a robot, sounds like one of those wild sci-fi twists, but hear me out, it's got more to it than just fan fiction. The biggest clue is those weird visual glitches that happen whenever Vanessa is nearby. Players have noticed odd distortion effects in Gregory's vision, like static on an old VHS tape, which feels less like normal human sight issues and more like something interfering with a digital feed. Before you think it's just a graphical quirk, the pattern is way too consistent to be random. It looks like a deliberate signal disruption, not just a bug. While Freddy doesn't comment directly on Gregory's eyes or vision changes, the subtle visual effects during tense moments definitely suggest something deeper at play with his perception. Then there's Gregory's behavior. Sometimes it feels a little stiff or programmed, almost echoing what we've seen in earlier games with animatronics that have limited autonomy. Fans compare this to characters like Charlie from the FNAF novels, who develop layers of cognition over time, adding fuel to the robotic replica theory. One popular spot in Security Breach is the hidden sticky note room, where cryptic files hint at experiments involving consciousness and AI. While there's no door labeled Charlie or explicit notes about replicating a child's mind through tech, the theme of robotic progression and blurred lines between human and machine is definitely present, but the debate isn't settled. Some say the glitching vision is just Vanessa messing with the animatronics, which would explain the weird effects without making Gregory a robot. Still, the robotic eye mechanic and Gregory's behavior stack up to a pretty compelling picture of him being more than just a regular kid in this haunted pizzeria. Here's the thing, if Gregory really is Gregbot, it turns Security Breach into a high-concept sci-fi saga about AI, identity, and what it means to be human, which you know is not something you signed up for when you expected jump scares. But if you think Gregory's uncertain nature is strange, wait until we dive into the dark mysteries behind Remnant and Agony, the forces animating these twisted machines. Remnant and Agony. Remnant isn't just glowing metal, it's literally the physical residue of memories trapped inside objects, often called haunted metal for good reason. Imagine memories, emotions, and even pieces of souls somehow fused into steel, creating this weird in-between state of spirit and machine. Before you shrug it off as game fluff, the Fazbear Frights books describe Remnant as the memory of a soul's pain left behind, which nails the concept perfectly. Basically, it's what lets ghosts feel almost real, not just spooky ideas or flickering shadows. It's the reason those old animatronics aren't just machines. They've got leftover feelings, traumas, and grudges embedded in them. Now, Agony takes this a step further. It's not just a haunting, it's negative emotional energy packed with hatred, sadness, and pure rage, essentially fueling the attack mode for the most dangerous animatronics. Some say Agony is just a particularly nasty flavor of Remnant, but others treat it like a separate lurking force, a distinct kind of dark energy in its own right. This confusion has split the community because the games and Fazbear Fright stories dance around these ideas without ever totally nailing down what makes them different. William Afton, ever the creepy mad scientist, figured out how to harvest Remnant by forcibly extracting it from fused, tortured souls. Think of it as distilling pure haunted metal from the horrors he caused and the pain he inflicted. He then used this Remnant to power his funtime animatronics, giving them that terrifying blend of robotic movement with ghostly menace. In FNAF AR Special Delivery, Remnant is visualized as a bright, shimmering orb, basically a little star made of pure spiritual energy, showing it's not just a mystery or metaphor, but a tangible physical force within the game universe. But here's where it gets wild. Agony is first introduced in the Fazbear Fright stories as a dark, raw emotional force powering the most hostile and unpredictable machines. Fans debate endlessly if Agony is some unique paranormal element or simply Remnant at its worst, amped up with extremely bad feelings. This blurry line complicates the lore, turning the metaphysical boundaries between spirit, memory, and emotional energy into a tangled mess of uncertainty. So it's not just about haunted machines anymore. It's about emotional energy, memory imprints, and how these forces warp and corrupt both flesh and metal alike. And if you think that's complicated, wait until you hear about the mysterious stitch line that threads everything together in the whole story web. Stitchline game. At one point, a huge chunk of the FNAF fandom believed the Fazbear Frights books and the Stitchline stories were locked into the exact same timeline as the main games. It made sense on paper, both share characters, animatronics, and plenty of mysterious overlaps. Fans thought they were just getting pieces of one giant puzzle scattered across games and novels. But here's the kicker. The official word from Scott Cawthon has always been that the books exist in a separate continuity from the games. Unlike some fans hoped, the Fazbear Frights series and Stitchline stories aren't part of one giant unified timeline. They're more like parallel stories that explore similar themes but don't line up perfectly in events or character arcs. The contradictions practically shout it. Character timelines don't align, events play out differently, and key figures like the Mimic behave in ways unique to each universe. Scott himself has called the books secondary canon, basically meaning they offer creative freedom and shouldn't be treated as gospel for the main games. So no matter how much fans want everything to connect perfectly, the official stance draws a solid line in the sand. Still, the emotional pull of stitching lore together won't quit. Fans debate and theorize endlessly about thematic connections, shared symbolism of Remnant, the agony that ties animatronics and humans, echoes of William Afton's shadow. Even if the stories aren't continuous, they feel spiritually linked, like different songs in the same haunting album. That desire to find a grand, unified theory reveals something about the community itself. FNAF fans crave order amidst chaos, a clear and complete narrative to sink their teeth into, even when the creator says, Nope, they're separate. The fall of the Stitchline Games theory isn't just a debunk, it's proof of how deeply everyone wants one epic story, no matter the medium. But if you think separating universes makes FNAF any less complicated, wait until we dive into the tangled web of the Mimic 1 program next. That one twists reality even further. Mimic 1 program. The Mimic 1 program isn't just some cold AI experiment, it's a glimpse into how technology tries and fails to replace what's lost in human connection. Created by engineer Edwin Murray in the early days of the Pizzaplex's development, Mimic 1 was designed to study and emulate human behavior, blending primitive artificial intelligence with animatronic systems long before the more well-known models arrived. Unlike the later, fully physical Mimic models, Mimic 1 never got a complete robotic body. It mostly existed as a complex software program running quietly on early Pizzaplex systems, observing both staff and animatronics alike from behind the scenes. But here's where it gets strangely poignant. Instead of mindlessly copying random behavior patterns, Mimic 1 honed in on imitating specific human traits it learned from interaction logs and archive security footage. This suggests an early, awkward attempt to capture human empathy inside lines of code. Clunky, imperfect, but undeniably human in its reach. A lot of this low-key backstory is hinted at in the Tales from the Pizzaplex book series, especially in the story Nexi, where Edwin's work on Mimic 1 is shown as fundamental to the darker, creepier AI experiments that followed, like Mimic 2. The books don't lay out any explicit timeline involving a family tragedy or violent machine outbursts, but they paint Edwin as obsessed, with bridging emotion and logic in a way no machine should handle. His motivations feel less like dramatic tragedy and more quiet, relentless desperation to recreate something real out of ones and zeros. Mimic 1's quiet failing led to the program being phased out once the Pizzaplex expanded its AI tech, replaced by newer, more aggressive models like Mimic 2. The antagonist you face in Security Breach's ruined DLC. Instead of a single catastrophic meltdown, Mimic 1's story is a slow burn of early hopes, tentative steps, and inevitable failure that laid the groundwork for the horror, unpredictability, and outright malfunction seen in the tech that came after. This isn't just a story about glitchy code or broken machines. It's about the uneasy mix of technology and humanity running through the entire FNAF saga. Mimic 1 stands as a quiet precursor, less monster, more awkward experiment, a flawed attempt born from human longing to simulate care, connection, and emotion in something that could never truly have it. So if you thought the Pizzaplex horrors were all just robots gone haywire, the tale of Mimic 1 shows there's a deeper, far subtler history fueling the entire Mimic saga. A reminder that behind every terrifying machine is the desperate hope of a person trying to hold on to what they lost. If you enjoyed this video and want to see more, click the video on the screen now.